Man, I ruined my saw video with that trash mic. Like, why'd I honestly believe yelling into my mic would be funny?
I need to be more mature. Yes, sir, we're in business.
Cause that's so rated. Disney Channel's brand new original comedy series coming in January. Yeah. Only on Disney Channel.
Real bees, when I walk up, get a drink. All the homies look at me.
The show that everyone's been waiting for is finally here. Unlike the first two shows we discussed, I actually grew up with this one, and I had some knowledge of the show. In the year 2003, a show by the name of That's So Raven premiered on Disney Channel. I may have said I grew up with the show, but I haven't fully watched an episode of the show in years. That's So Raven has a total of 4 seasons with 100 episodes. Fun fact, this was Disney's first show to break the 65 episode rule, so that should tell you how popular the show was. When the series premiered, it was watched by 3.5 million viewers, making itself the first Disney Channel series to garner over 3 million views. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was Disney's first show to have a laugh track. That's So Raven would run from 2003 to 2007. Later, we got a spin-off show that I'll cover in the future, and a sequel series that I'll cover in the future. Did you know that Cory in the House could have been a spin-off about Raven, but Raven-Symoné declined? And there was also a movie that never went into production. A good chance you all know this, but I'll be upset if I left this out. There were games too? Now how did I not see this? I think I said everything I needed. We have 4 seasons to tackle, and thankfully, I'm not alone. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Artiste TB and Man of 1,000 Thoughts. And I didn't ask them to record an intro, so this is kind of awkward. All jokes aside, let's review That's So Raven. So let's start off on the main character, Raven. One thing I enjoy about Raven is the fact that she's so energetic, always looking on the bright side of things, and always there to lend a hand. Another thing is that Raven is sidekick. Every episode, Raven will have a vision that relates to the episode's plot. But since Raven's a teen, she will often look into her visions a bit too much. She'll think something bad is going to happen, so she tries to prevent it. But in reality, she's the one who causes them. I don't know why, but I kind of like that about Raven. Her visions are never wrong, it's just the fact that she takes matters into her own hands, and that's what causes the vision to come true. But you know her heart's in the right place.
And I keyed Raven Baxter before it was even a thing! I mean, a young black girl growing up, but something about her that's invisible makes her different, thus struggling to relate to her peers. Child, did Disney just steal my likeness and just put a supernatural spin on it? Because Raven is literally me before my diagnosis. I like to headcanon that Raven is autistic or at least neurodivergent coded because that's how hard I projected myself onto her.
Raven was a character that was loud, but her personality was so fun, so you can see why many grew attached to her. She was very relatable for many black girls that either were her or wanted to be her. Raven was a character faced with many different hardships of being a teenager, be it her struggles with school or struggles with holding a relationship or connecting with her friends and family. There was something anyone could relate easily with her. Not to mention how funny she overall is. To this day, I find myself laughing at how much Raven-Symoné could chew the scenery. She just has a strong, demanding presence that puts your focus on her. All the crazy shenanigans she gets into has her being on her A game with reactions to things. BTW, you know she said nigga one time on the show? Just kind of a little fun fact for you.
Following alongside Raven is Chelsea and Eddie. Chelsea is cool, but I don't like the way they did her in later seasons. Now, she never was the smartest character in the show, but she was smart in her own way. I think it was season 3 where I noticed a huge change because Chelsea went from being playfully dumb to just questionably dumb. Sometimes I laugh, but most of the time I was just like, okay, we get it. But I do like Raven and Chelsea's friendship.
The supporting cast weren't any slouches either. Chelsea's airheadedness always could get a good laugh from me, but she still had great sincere moments, be it with Raven or just by herself. Then you got Eddie, who was mad funny with a lot of his lines. I'm not gonna talk too much about what personally went on in his life, but I do hear he's doing pretty good. I mean, he's got some stuff where he's spitting some good bars in his music, so nice to see a brother get himself together. I can dig it. All 3 together gave a nice dynamic of a sincere friendship.
Eddie is cool too. When he's not hanging out with Raven and Chelsea, he's either trying to get a girl with dated 2000 slang, or just trying to be a popular kid, which both never really work out, so there's that. But Eddie's pretty cool. and the trio wouldn't be the same without him. In Raven's family, we have Victor, Tanya, and Corey. Victor is a really good dad. I love it when sitcoms don't make the father of the show so over the top. Victor is very down to earth, giving his kids some great advice. There's an episode in season 1 I like mainly because of what Victor said, which I'll cover a bit later. Not to mention, Victor made me laugh a lot, so he's definitely one of my favorite TV dads. Tanya is the mother, and she's also a great parent. She's down to earth, yeah, but she has her silly moments. In season 4, she was just completely gone because she went to law school in England, and we never saw her again. Unless she's in Raven's home, I haven't watched an episode of that in years. I do think Tanya's a good mother, and I think Victor and Tanya's relationship is very nice.
Raven's family gives off a good, sincere silliness. They all work well off each other with how they give a bit of dysfunctional family vibe, but without playing any major stereotypes. They work as a great support net for Raven that's very believable. And before you ask, what about Corey? No, I'm not touching that.
These next batch of characters are people who occasionally reappear, starting with Corey's best friend, William. Corey had a bunch of best friends, but William is the one we see the most. He's smart. That's it. Not bad whatsoever, but he's just there. Lastly, I want to talk about Raven's love interest, Devon. He's definitely a love interest. There's not much I remember from him. All I know is that he was in love with Raven, and he moved away at some point in the series. He's not a bad dude, just a forgettable love interest. I think it's best I keep this short because we have a lot of episodes to cover in this video. So I think I made the right decision making the segment short. Am I right?
You are absolutely right.
Why, thank you, Geek! Okay, I think I said all I need to say, so let's get into season 1. This video's gonna be long.
Run it, run it, run it, run it. I rock, I roll, I glow, I glow.
Okay, so guess what? Episodes are out of order. So yeah, just bear with me. I didn't feel like getting them in order. Don't shout at me. First episode is very simple, and I really appreciate that. Episode 1 is where Eddie is trying to get into a basketball team, but Raven has a vision to where Eddie fails his Spanish test. So Raven and Chelsea try to teach him Spanish before the test, but nothing works. Chelsea lets it slip out that Raven saw the answers to the test. Raven debates whether to show the answers to Eddie or not, but Raven eventually helps Eddie by giving them the answers, just for the test to be changed at the last minute, and by pure luck, Eddie passes with a C. I think this was a fun introduction to these characters. Not every joke lands. One joke that made me laugh was when Corey started speaking Spanish.
Ay, caramba, solo tengo 10 años y yo puedo hablar español. Eres estúpido y desagradable. ¿Qué clase de hambre eres? Estúpido, estúpido, estúpido!
But I think this episode was nice. Episode 2 is just an okay episode. Raven's teacher wants to see her parents because she called him out for his unfair teaching. This causes Raven to hesitate to tell her parents because she feels like they think she's a perfect child. So Raven takes things to her own hands by pretending to be her own parent, which goes as well as you expected. The episode ends with Raven's parents telling her it's okay to make mistakes. Not a bad episode, but it's alright. Episode 4 is when Victor is meant to be on TV, but when Corey and his friends, that's Beans by the way, Corey and his friend buy a hypno watch and attempts to hypnotize their crushes. It doesn't work on Raven and Chelsea, but it somehow works on Victor. So with the TV crew there, Raven, Corey, and Tanya try to run the show, failing of course. He cooks an omelet and gets the recognition he deserves. This episode is goofy, but not in a good way. There are a few funny parts here and there, but overall kinda mid. Episode 8 is where Raven joins a group of kids with unique skills, like her. I was digging where the episode was going, but it got ruined once Eddie and Chelsea found out what Raven was doing the whole time. I hate the fact that Eddie and Chelsea got away with calling the unique kids freaks. I understand that they missed their friend, but the amount of times they said freak was uncalled for.
Saving Psychic Raven, where Raven befriends other psychic kids and finally feels normal for once. Looking at this episode from an autistic lens, which are the only lens I own, my optometrist hates me. Raven was definitely me the first time I went to an autism symposium, a conference meant for and created by autistic people. Low lighting, quiet rooms, STEM toys, ugh! This place is ADA's wet dream. Not only did I finally meet other autistic black women like me, but the room was even more diverse from ethnicity to mobility. Because autism doesn't have a look, no matter how many gifted white boys media wants to throw at us. But back to the episode, Chelsea and Eddie were definitely out of pocket for calling Raven's new friends freaks, and implying that she's different from them to avoid insulting her. But that's even more rude coming from normies, a name for those who aren't psychic. Kinda like how neurotypical is used to describe folks who aren't neurodivergent. I swear, the parallels create themselves, y'all. The dots are there. I'm just connecting them.
Episode 9 is also a trash episode. Raven is planning a party, but the popular kid, Nikki, is planning one on the same day. And since she's the popular kid, she's rude for really no reason. She tells everyone at school that Raven's party was today, and of course, there was no party, so it embarrassed Raven in the process. The next day, Raven, Eddie, and Chelsea plan to prank her back. They do so, and Raven grows a conscience at the last minute, and decides not to go through with it. Yet they end the episode by going through with it. So that lesson was just completely thrown out the window. Episode 12 is when Raven's mom becomes a substitute. And even though everyone else likes Tanya, Raven feels like she's embarrassing her. Which, look, Tanya's a good TV mom, but some of these jokes are just ugh. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this episode has a really sweet ending. Episode 13 is possibly the funniest episode in the series. Raven tries to go on a date with a much older kid. Her parents say no, so Raven sneaks out. And we find out how gross the guy actually is, and it's hilarious. Episode 16 is where Chelsea calls out Raven for her control issues, and it causes them to split up, even though they have a play to perform in. In the end, Eddie puts them both in the play, and they sing, eventually forgiving each other at the end. This episode is silly, but I like it. Episode 17 is where Raven gets hired as a sidekick on TV, but she uses it to catch a boy's attention. Pretty sure you all know how this is going to go. Episode 18 is where Victor gets fired from this job, and Raven tries everything in her power to get him hired again. For some reason, everyone believes that Raven is a famous singer. If there's one thing I can say for season 1, is that the costumes they have Raven in weren't all that convincing. This of course doesn't work, and instead of Victor getting mad at Raven, he gives possibly some of the best advice I've ever heard.
But see, the point of this whole thing is, life is gonna knock you down sometimes, and that's okay. But what's not okay is when you let life keep you down.
For as great as this ending is, it doesn't mean anything. I still think this episode is okay. Episode 21 is where Eddie and Chelsea are getting mad at Raven because her visions have been making them get embarrassed at school. Not gonna bother with a full plot synopsis, this episode sucks. Chelsea and Eddie were incredibly toxic in this one for dissing Raven just because their visions were wrong. Honestly, a weak way to end the season. I'm gonna be real for a second and say this season was kinda mid. Most episodes either weren't all that funny, or they made the characters unlikable for no reason. I like a few episodes in this season, and I feel like I could rewatch them sometime in the future. But from what I watched, season 1 is just okay. It's kinda my fault because I kinda overhyped the show in my head expecting a masterpiece. So yeah, lesson learned. I won't do that again. Next season. Okay, let's start. Episode 1 starts with Victor getting his own restaurant. Which, pause real quick, I love seeing stuff like this. When the show makes you feel happy for what a character accomplished, the show did something right. Anyways, Raven goes throughout the episode thinking that Eddie and Chelsea were dating behind her back, but they're really just trying to learn salsa dance. I think this episode has a few funny moments. I like the fact that Raven's disguises got better. Overall, not bad. Episode 2 is a Halloween special where Chelsea accidentally eats a burger. Chelsea's vegan, by the way. While Raven and Chelsea miss their spells, Chelsea's pen falls into the potion, causing Raven and Chelsea's to slowly turn into cows. This episode most definitely had me laughing throughout. Everything got weird in the best way. Episode 8 is my favorite episode this season. Raven is happy that her dress was featured in the fashion show until she realizes to be featured in the show, Raven has to get incredibly thin. Like, impossibly thin. She resigns at first, but after a great pep talk, Raven walks on stage showing off her dress. This episode has a great message about loving your body. Something I think this show tackled perfectly.
I just love how this show tackled body imagery and the importance of balanced eating habits. I'm gonna have to make my own videos on it at some point, because I know I could talk for hours about health and fitness, but I've already reached my emotional quota for the week. I just blew my load in the We Bare Bears diet culture video. I just can't right now. Just use your imagination of me pounding your ass with knowledge. And also my massive
Episode 9 wants to go on a date with Devon. Episode 9 is where Raven wants to go on a date with Devon, but she can't go till she brings a grade up in science. So she spends the rest of the episode trying to come up with a project. William helps, but he shreds the paper at the end, and Raven tries to piece the paper together. At the tail end of the episode, Victor shreds the paper again after Raven fixes it. So Raven improvises and causes a chemical to explode. She doesn't get to go to the concert, so Devon comes by and they enjoy the music on the radio. The ending is pretty sweet, but just everything else was okay. Episode 12 was where Devon has to move away, and he struggles to tell Raven. Devon tells Chelsea, and the news gets back to Raven. Raven tries everything in her power to prevent this from happening, but ultimately fails, and Raven and Devon say their goodbyes. I like this episode, and the ending is pretty upsetting. Not really, I knew he was going to be back soon. Episode 15 is where Eddie becomes a sidekick, and instead of Eddie hiding that part of him, he tells everyone, and he even gets a girl. Sadly, his powers doesn't last long, and they wear off at the end. I like this one. Eddie's face when he gets a vision is very funny. Episode 18 is a musical episode. The school thinks a casting agent is at their school, but it turns out it was just an exterminator. This is an okay episode, mainly because none of the songs are memorable in my opinion. But that's just me. This episode is so 2000s because only in that period you can jump on the lunch table and everyone will cheer you on. Episode 19 is where the class has to participate in activities related to their future career. Chelsea and Eddie get involved too, but this episode mainly focuses on Raven and Corey. Throughout the episode, Raven and Corey tell fake stories until the truth gets revealed in the end. This episode is funny, but I want to talk about this one part.
Make a couple phone calls.
Boom mic.
We got a boom mic.
Episode 21 is where Raven and Chelsea went to get jobs at the Chill Grill, and they get fired on their first day, but Victor gives them one more chance. Raven and Chelsea ended up booking too many people on top of a kid's birthday party, and they decide to make a giant pizza. That's it. I like this episode. I think it's pretty funny.
Psst, hey, Tim, I don't really care where you put this in the video, but when you talk about season 2, just know that I really love that sauce skiing scene from My Big Fat Pizza Party. That's all I had to say. Okay, love you, bye.
The final episode of season 2 is where the bully character, Alana, is invited to a sleepover. If there's one thing I hate more than a bully character, is when they try to give that bully character a redemption arc, and it's completely thrown out the window at the end. The best way to describe this episode was wasted potential. Yet another weak ending to the season. Although I wasn't a huge fan of the final episode, I enjoyed the season. I laughed a lot at most of the jokes, and was impressed in how they tackled certain subjects. Season 2 was definitely better than I was expecting, and I dig it. This is the part where Tim D takes an intermission. Season 3 has the most episodes of the series, having a total of 35 episodes, so we got no time to waste. Episode 1 is where Raven offers a makeover to a random guy at school. She gets a vision telling her that the guy falls in love with her, so she reminds him that this is just a friend thing. Once she gives him the makeover, she actually falls for him. Raven tries to ruin his chances with this other girl, which works for a second until the girl forgives him. I like this episode for its ending. It gives a message about not judging somebody based on their appearance. If Raven didn't shove off this dude, she would have had him, because he had feelings for Raven as well. I'm referring to the boy as he because I just forgot his name. Not a bad episode though. Episode 3 is where Raven, Victor, and Corey come up with an invention to show Presto. This is also the first appearance of Stanley. I'm just gonna say, James Avery did an amazing job at his role. Rest in peace to that king dude. Nice episode though. Episode 5 is where Corey steals something at the mall, but his conscience ended up getting the best of him, and it causes him to put the stolen item back, just in time before the others get caught. Raven acting as a cop is just hilarious. This episode was fun, and it also reminds me of the time in high school. Yeah, I got too uncomfortable telling this story, so I just took it out. And I almost got arrested, so yeah, I think I'm just gonna cut that out. Episode 8 is a simple episode where a guy named Eric confuses Raven for a girl named Natasha. So of course Raven pretends to be Natasha, until the end it's revealed that Raven's been lying the whole time. I'll admit this scene made me belly laugh.
It's worse that they lied about it afterwards. That's the one thing I can't stand is a liar! Get the fuck out my crib! Get out my crib!
Episode 10 is another episode that handles a serious topic. Raven and Chelsea apply for a clothing store. Raven doing a good job, and Chelsea doing well, I think you can guess what happened. Although Raven did a great job, Chelsea is hired over Raven, leading to Raven having a vision of the manager claiming she doesn't hire black people. So basically the rest of the episode is trying to get her to say it on live TV to make her lose her job. This is a great episode with something I was not expecting to be handled well at all. I was impressed with this one. Episode 17 is where Raven, Eddie, and Chelsea run a store at their school. Eddie's girlfriend is expecting a gift, so he asks Raven and Chelsea, and they say no. Later, Raven has a vision where Eddie steals money from the safe, but it just turns out that he sold all his CDs. I think this episode is just okay. I think Eddie's girl is very needy, if you know what I mean. And they make Eddie unlikable in this one scene just because Raven and Chelsea doesn't want to give him money.
I'm gonna get that money one way or another. Thanks for helping me out, team.
Bitch ass nigga!
Episode 19 is where Victor and Tanya go out of town, so they leave Corey and Raven at the house. Corey wants a party, but Raven doesn't. So what Corey does is make Raven break a lamp by accident and have people pay to party. The parents of course find out at the end, and Raven and Corey get in trouble. This episode is also okay. Nothing you haven't seen before. Episode 24 is where Corey wants to be a part of the cool kids, but he's too scared to skate. So Raven tries to help Corey and make it seem like he's a cool kid in this situation. I like this episode. And skating Raven is possibly the funniest disguise I've ever seen so far. Episode 27 and 28 is a two-part special. Raven finds a picture of her distant cousin and decides to visit. Chelsea is also with her, I love the fact that the distant family is just Raven Simone, except for the oldest daughter and her mother. All this beef because they think Victor stole a gravy bowl, but they find out it was just buried years ago. So the whole feud was just a waste of time. Honestly, I like this episode. I think it's really funny and might be my favorite episode of the season. Fun fact, this was the most viewed episode of the show, gaining over 10 million views. Episode 32 is where Raven, Eddie, and Chelsea get ready for prom. While Eddie and Chelsea get ready with their prom dates, Raven flies solo, until the end when Devon comes back to visit, and thankfully catches Raven at the last minute, and they dance for a while. Not bad, the ending's pretty sweet, but Raven was a bit much.
Especially when looking at Vision Impossible in Season 3, where Raven's visions are jacked up due to an allergic reaction in her new shampoo, and Dr. Sleevemore offers to completely shut off her visions. Quick side note, Raven's allergy to mushrooms is like my allergy to citrus, because no one remembers until I'm severely affected by it. I swear Raven was the most relatable character for me. Y'all don't understand. That was my girl. I don't care what Raven Simone does. She was my girl. That was my rap. But anyways, thinking back on all the pain and anguish caused by her visions, Raven seriously considers having them turned off for good. But her family reflects on all the good her visions have caused too. And when you think about it, being psychic is all Raven knows. It's such a large and integral part of her identity that if you remove the visions, you essentially remove a piece of Raven. That's like if an advanced neurosurgeon offered to rewire my brain so I wouldn't be autistic. Is it a pain not knowing or understanding why people do the things they do? Certainly. But I'm able to have a unique perspective on issues and allow my creativity to run wild. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, especially to understand other humans. Hello, introvert, I hate people. Except for the ones I don't.
Count yourself lucky, Timmy.
The final episode of Season 3 is basically when Raven volunteers to take care of an elderly lady, who at first seems bitter, but the more Raven hangs out with her, she finds out that she was a jazz singer, and Victor's restaurant used to be the Four Aches. At the end of the episode, Victor makes the restaurant look like it did years ago, ending with a performance. This episode was also great. The last few minutes are just amazing. I'm happy Season 3 ended on a high note. Overall, yeah, Season 3 has a lot of episodes, but almost every episode was a joy to watch. I think the season has a lot of subjects that were handled pretty well. The jokes were definitely a lot better here than previous seasons, and there was rarely a time where I got mad at a character for being unlikable. Season 3 hits for sure. Okay, time for the final season. Alright, we made it. This took forever, but we're finally here. So, let's get started. Episode 1 is when Raven, Chelsea, and Eddie join a community to show kids what they like to do. Raven gets this one person by the name of Sydney. At first she seems pretty rude, but she later warms up to Raven. But she flips when she hears she has to do a stand-up act. At first it was just a weird spaz, but we find out that Sydney is a foster kid, and she hates to get too attached to people because they leave her. After a sweet little conversation between Raven and Sydney, Sydney comes out to perform. This episode was so sweet for no reason, dude. Corey did something that was mature. Also, Raven and Sydney have a sister bond, and they carry it over to later episodes, and I love it. Episode 3 is where Raven gets the opportunity to be an intern at her dream job. She has a vision that shows that she has a big office, but in reality, Raven doesn't even have an office. She has a corner. Raven lets it slip at school and the whole class comes to visit her, and the rest of the episode is Raven trying to get everyone out of her boss's office. I think this episode is neat. It's cool to see Raven move on up, and I think the ending is pretty nice. Episode 5 is where Raven's boss gets her heart broken, and Raven watches over her, while also having a date with Devon. This is just a silly episode, and I think Devon overreacted to something so small.
We had one night together, and you messed it up. We're through, Ray.
Episode 7 is where Eddie gets his license, so Raven, Chelsea, and Eddie drive together. Or more so, Eddie drives Raven and Chelsea to the mall. All until they drive to the country, and Eddie's confused for a thief, and Eddie's arrested. Later on with Raven and Chelsea being arrested as well. But thankfully at the last minute, they catch the thief, and they gain are free to go. They did Eddie dirty in this episode, but it's still pretty funny, and Raven's disguise made me laugh like hard. Episode 10 is where the community center is holding a sister competition, so Raven and Sydney join together, alongside Tiffany and the sister. Oh yeah, Tiffany is the new bully character. Pretty sure you can tell how I feel about her. Anyways, this episode is pretty funny, especially when everyone in the room starts arguing for no reason. And Raven and Sydney's relationship is so sweet. Episode 11 is a crossover episode with Zach and Cody. I'm surprised this episode stuck with Raven and didn't try to force the fact that this is a crossover. Plus, I'm sure I'll see part 2 when I get to Zach and Cody in the future. Episode 14 is where Raven uses a dating site to find her match. When she finds one, she goes to school the next day looking for him. Little does she know, it's Eddie. I was scared to see what they're going to do with this one because I never really saw Raven and Eddie as a couple, and I think they handled this pretty well. They tried to see if they can make it work, but they both respectfully decide that it's just better to stay as friends. And it didn't make this episode weird, so props.
Side note, I'm glad they ultimately went against the idea of Eddie and Raven being a thing. Just a nice thing I think they are all the better for not doing.
Episode 16 is where Eddie wants to join a crew at his school, so they give him all these tasks. Raven and Chelsea feel like they're taking advantage of him, so they decide to play a prank. Eddie thinks the conversation is going somewhere else, but he finds out he was able to join. But his chances get ruined once Raven and Chelsea spill beans on the crew. I dig this episode. Episode 20 is where Raven gets a new teacher, and she seems pretty chill. But her being chill is costing her job. The class is supposed to study for a test, and of course, they don't. And Raven tries to think of a way to get the test canceled. But she doesn't know that the test was already pushed back, and messes with the teacher by pretending there's a spider in the classroom. She screams and runs out, costing her job. But thankfully, at the end, the principal hires her again after finding a real spider. Oh yeah, does Corey's friend look familiar to you? I wonder if he's going to be a part of any other Disney Channel show. This is a fun episode. Okay, so the final episode of the show is so abrupt, it had me searching on Google for hours to see if Disney Plus made a mistake. But nah, this is the final episode. Corey holds a pack of cigarettes for a friend, and Raven thinks he's smoking. But at the end, his friend admits to smoking, and that's it. This episode isn't bad, but it's not what I was expecting from the show. There are so many shows that cover the dangers of smoking, so that makes this episode kind of underwhelming. So yeah, this was the final episode. That's So Raven. Not what I was expecting at all. Season 4, even with its underwhelming finale, is still great. I'll go as far as to say this is probably my favorite season of the show. To see these characters grow so much and make big moves like Raven was so satisfying to watch. I'm happy that Season 4 was a good time. Definitely a great watch. With that being said, we're finished with That's So Raven.
That's So Raven was definitely something far different than what you would expect from Disney Channel. It was one of those shows that really wanted to drive home black culture for a kids show. We had stuff like Proud Family and Kenan and Kel before, but That's So Raven was one of those shows that really wanted to dive into it. But the nice caveat was that, like its predecessors, was that it made black culture seem more accessible to a mainstream kid audience. All in all, That's So Raven brought a unique sense of humor and heart to Disney Channel in the early 2000s that could not be replicated. Even with their sequel series. It was a show that a generation was able to take inspiration from, as well as one many black kids could see themselves in.
Overall, I think That's So Raven's a good show. I can see why so many people loved it. The energy was there, the characters are fun, and the ability to cover serious topics was better than I expected. But like always, I'm gonna miss staying up a little late just to catch an episode or two. I had fun revisiting the show after so many years. I'm pretty sure everyone has seen the show, but if you haven't, check the show out and see what's so mysterious about her. Okay, so I think...
Yeah, that's enough of That's So Raven. It's time that we get into the underappreciated fella of the future, you know what I'm saying?
Wow, Review Your Life is in my house, and from the looks of it, I forgot to ask you for character stills. Hey, real quick, how did you open the door?
What door? There's just a hole that everyone can get in.
Whatever, it's fine. Next time I see y'all, we'll be doing Phil of the Future with Review Your Life.
Room for one more?